The Galactic Concorde's research vessel Saravan had been on a standard planetary survey when contact was lost above the quiet world of Veltrax-9. The ship had a crew of over 300, made up of various species from across the galaxy. At first, Concorde Command believed it to be a technical error. Veltrax-9 was known for its unstable magnetosphere, but when emergency pings were ignored and beacons failed to respond, a formal investigation was launched. Dr. Kelnas, a senior xenobiologist from the Cethally species, was among the first to arrive on the recovery team. Veltrax-9 looked calm from orbit: cloud-streaked skies, golden plains, and ancient forests untouched by sentient life. But the calm didn't last. When Kelnas and his team boarded the Saravan, what they found made them pause. There was no damage to the ship, no signs of fire, battle, or even a struggle. Equipment remained in place, meals half-eaten in the mess hall, and navigation logs frozen mid-entry. It was as if everyone had simply disappeared, except three. The crew's quarters, inside a sealed medical bay, were the only survivors: 3 humans. Commander Alara Chen, Lieutenant Marlo Venn, and Technician Rosa Keeley. They were alive, conscious, and shaken. They spoke quietly, with dry mouths and pale faces, as if unsure whether they were still dreaming. Rosa cried when she saw other Concorde uniforms. Marlo kept asking what day it was. Lara, the senior officer among them, simply said they came, and then they stopped. The medical scans confirmed they were unharmed, no injuries, no toxins, not even stress-induced physical damage. But they were terrified. When Kelnas asked who had come, the answer sent a chill through the recovery team: the Vorin Hiva, rogue insectoid faction known for violent raids. The Vorin had no history of diplomacy and were feared for overwhelming force, often leaving no survivors. Why had they spared the humans? The security logs gave a deeper mystery. Holographic footage showed the Vorin bursting into various sections of the ship, using plasma cutters and hive speech shrieks. Crew members of various species fought or fled, but whenever the Vorin came near one of the humans, they suddenly froze. They hesitated. They backed away. One particularly large Vorin warrior reached out toward Commander Chun, then stopped, let out a strange high-pitched sound, and turned, its weapon on itself, disintegrating in a flash of heat and smoke. The logs showed no errors, no illusions. It had happened exactly as recorded. In every room where a human was present, the Vorin either fled, malfunctioned, or disturbingly self-terminated. Dr. Kelnas had never seen anything like it. Why would one of the most aggressive species in the quadrant avoid a fight? Only when humans were involved? Alara couldn't explain. Neither could Rosa or Marlo. They had hidden in the med bay only because that's where they had been when the alarms went off. But something had kept the attackers from crossing that threshold. As the Saravan was tugged back to Concorde space, whispers began to spread through the ranks, quiet, careful ones. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Rumors surfaced of similar attacks in outer sectors where only human colonies were spared. Outposts flattened, cities silenced, but human settlements, somehow untouched. Many had written it off as luck. Others thought it was exaggeration. But this was recorded proof. The Vorin were not just avoiding a fight, they were afraid. Some even said they acted like they were following an old warning, as if the presence of humans triggered a deep instinct to retreat. Kelnas, who had spent years studying ancient cultures and extinct species, began digging through old logs and fragmentary reports. He found half-erased files from frontier stations, claiming that certain raiders had intentionally bypassed Earth-line trade routes. Ships marked with human crests were left alone, even when unguarded. There was no pattern in politics, no formal treaties, but there was a pattern in behavior. Humans were being spared again and again. No one could say why. When asked, the survivors of Veltrax-9 could only repeat what they had felt: a presence in the air during the attack. Like being watched by something else, something not on the ship, not the Vorin, Lara described it as. A cold pressure in her chest, followed by a wave of heat and then silence. The Vorin had vanished after that. No one saw them leave. One moment there were shrieks and movement, the next, just empty corridors. Concorde officials hesitated to release the full report. They feared panic or worse, misinterpretation. But those who had seen the security footage knew one thing for certain. The Vorn, brutal and unrelenting, had chosen not to fight three unarmed humans. Not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't. The mystery deepened with each. New report and questions began forming at the highest levels of Concord Command. Was humanity protected by some unknown force? Is there something in their past, some ancient pact or forgotten threat that made the galaxy treat them differently? And if so, who remembered it? Who enforced it? For now, there were no answers, only silence. But across star systems, from trade hubs to military outposts, one phrase began to echo in hushed voices. Humans are untouchable, not out of reverence, not out of kindness, but because somewhere, somehow, someone had made it so. Denethor Prime was a quiet world of stone, sand, and storms far from the center of galactic politics, yet known to those who studied ancient history as the home of the Whisper Archive. The archive was buried deep within a mountain range that had never been touched by war or time, sealed by technologies no species could claim to have created. Only the most trusted researchers and diplomats were allowed near it, and even fewer were permitted access to its deeper vaults. When the pattern of attacks began to form, humans always surviving when others did not, the Galactic Concord decided to investigate its oldest records, hoping that forgotten knowledge might hold the answer. A joint team was assembled, scientists, historians, and a select group of intelligence officers. Among them was Commander Ala Reyes, a human with a calm voice and sharp eyes, an archivist Varn, a reptilian scholar from the Falar Dominion known for his obsession with pre-space civilizations. Though the two had never worked together, they quickly formed an odd partnership built on quiet respect and curiosity. Inside the archive, they walked through corridors lit by soft blue light and lined with memory crystals, fossil code engravings, and data slates that spoke in whispers when touched. The deeper they went, the stranger the symbols became, languages that had no match in any database. Stories written in patterns that seemed to shift when no one was looking. Then they found it, a sealed chamber containing encrypted scrolls far older than any known civilization. With the help of the archive's AI interpreter, they managed to unlock fragments of the texts. What they discovered made even the seasoned researchers pause. The scrolls told of an event over 30,000 years ago, a war so terrible it left entire regions of space empty. The texts spoke of a force called the Black Fire. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but something far more abstract and frightening. It was described not by its appearance, but by what followed it. Silence, uncreation, and total absence. The scrolls did not say that humanity created this force, only that it had been connected to them during a time of great destruction. A curious detail kept appearing whenever Earth was attacked. The attackers simply ceased to exist. No records, no survivors, not even debris. They vanished as if wiped from both memory and reality. The oldest AI recorders, built by species long extinct, referred to the Black Fire not with warning signs or cautionary notes, but with reverence and distance, as if even writing about it too clearly might bring it back. Commander Reyes studied the texts with growing unease. There was no pride in these records, no claims of victory, just fragmented warnings. They awakened the silence. The fire follows those who strike first, and mark the origin world never approach. Archivist Varn, who had spent his life chasing ancient legends, was visibly shaken. His scales darkened, and he moved slowly, as if the archive itself had grown heavier. At one point he looked at Reyes and whispered, "They remember." Not with logic, but with fear. Reyes asked him what he meant, and Varn explained that the fear was not about humans themselves, but about what might still be tied to them, something older than memory, something the galaxy had learned. Not through explanation, but through loss. She tried to reason through it. Humans had no history of using galaxy-ending weapons. Earth's archives were open, transparent, and well-studied by Concord historians. Yet somehow, there was a shadow behind their past, a piece missing that no one had noticed until now. Varn proposed a theory. Perhaps early humanity had been guided, or changed, by contact with a force or intelligence beyond known space. Not as victims, That is something stranger, something watched, remembered, and perhaps never truly alone. Back aboard the Concorde ship orbiting Denethor Prime, the report was classified before it was even sent. Only a handful of leaders would read it, and of those few, not one dared speak of the Black Fire in public. But deep within the halls of power, quiet meetings were held, and a silent truth began to form. If the legends were true, then humanity was not to be feared, because of what it could do, but because of what had once been done on its behalf. And if such a force still lingered in the shadows of space, then the rule had to remain clear to all: do not touch the humans. The message arrived in silence, buried in layers of encryption, signal bouncing between dead satellites and ghost buoys before reaching the Galactic Concorde's High Council. Chamber on Elysian Prime. No one expected it, not from the Kareth Dominion, species known for brutality, power, and a cold refusal to share intelligence. Yet the message was clear, short, and chilling. We do not engage humans. It is agreed. It is known. First, the counselors thought it was a threat, or worse, a warning of an unseen conflict. But when decoded in full, it became something else entirely: an invitation to a summit unlike any held in living memory. Commander Ayla Reyes, still recovering from the revelations uncovered on Denethor Prime, was called to attend. She arrived at a secured diplomatic station orbiting a neutral star, where over 30 species, many of them long-standing enemies, had gathered without a single weapon drawn. It was not peace that brought them together, it was fear. The summit began without formality. The Kareth ambassador, a towering being of iron-gray skin and glassy black eyes, took the central platform and told a story that hushed the entire chamber. Long ago, before any treaties or pacts, a Kareth fleet of 72 warships launched an unprovoked assault on a human colony in the Dareth system. The colony was small, unarmed, and unable to resist. But the Kareth found no fight, only civilians, radio silence, and then something else. Minutes after landing, the fleet's systems began to fail. Energy readings spiked, then vanished. Crews reported shadows moving between the stars. Sensor data became unreadable, and one by one, entire ships disappeared. No explosions, no distress signals, just silence. Only a single scout vessel returned, its crew driven half-mad, unable to describe what they had seen. From that moment on, the Kareth never touched a human world again. So began the Pact of Shadows, a silent agreement passed between species. In whispers and private communiques, humans are off limits. No formal council ever signed it. No law enforced it. But it was known, respected, and followed without question. Ambassador Thalru of the Kareth ended his speech with a single line that echoed through the chamber: "We do not harm humans. We do not even try." Many nodded. Others stayed quiet, their expressions tense. Commander Reyes sat still, trying to understand the weight of what she had just heard. All her life, she had known humans were seen as tough, resourceful, even lucky, but this was different. This was fear written into interstellar policy. Varn, the reptilian archivist who had joined her on Denethor Prime, stood beside her, his face unreadable. He whispered, "It goes deeper than even the archive told us." But not all present believed the old stories. The Thrynex Collectiva, rising faction from the outer void, broke the silence with a harsh voice, broadcast through a proxy unit. The Thrynex were young by galactic standards, impatient and eager to claim territory. Crystalline creature, known only as the Speaker, called the legend superstition. They challenged the pact openly, stating that no force, natural or supernatural, could stop the will of progress. They claimed the humans had crafted a clever lie, using myths and isolated accidents to shield themselves from consequences. "All bow to shadows," the Speaker said, voice crackling with static, "but we are not afraid of the dark." Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. For a moment, it seemed violence might break out, but the Kareth ambassador simply stepped back and looked at Commander Reyes. "Let them try," he said quietly. "If the fire still burns, they will learn. If not, the galaxy will finally know." The summit ended without agreement, the Threnix refusing to honor the pact, the others choosing silence over protest. On her return flight, Reyes reviewed the stories, cross-referencing logs from a dozen species, comparing timelines and events. The same pattern held. Every attack against humans that broke the unspoken rule ended in unexplained disaster. Ships vanished, leaders died mysteriously, and in one case, an entire moon used as a staging ground simply fractured and drifted apart. The cause was never found. No survivors ever told the full story. Reyes wondered, was humanity being protected, watched, or was it something deeper, something built into the fabric of the galaxy itself? Had Earth once made a pact of its own, long forgotten by humans, but not by those who witnessed its consequences? The thought stayed with her, heavy and cold. She didn't know what the Threnix would do next, but she knew they would test the boundaries soon. And when they did, she feared the response would not come from any Concord fleet. It would come from whatever force had written the Pact of Shadows into the stars long before humans learned to read them. As the stars slipped by outside her window, Reyes whispered a quiet thought to herself. Not a warning, but a truth. They don't fear us. They fear what comes when we are harmed. And somewhere far from the Concord's reach, the Threnix prepared their fleets. Unaware that the galaxy was holding its breath, the Eltaran Nebula shimmered like a river of light in deep space, glowing blue and violet with energy storms that made communication difficult and sensor readings unreliable. Perfect place for an ambush. The Threnix Collective knew this, and they chose their moment carefully. Despite warnings, despite stories, passed between empires and cautious tones, they sent a full strike force to attack Haven 47, a small human science outpost stationed near the nebula's edge. It was a peaceful place, mostly researchers and engineers, guarded by a few defense drones and a single orbital shield. The Threnix believed it would be an easy victory, a show of strength to prove the galaxy's fear of humans was nothing more than myth. Their ships broke through the clouds of cosmic dust, sleek and sharp, releasing swarms of hunter drones as they fired on the station without warning. The human defenders fought back bravely, launching every drone and turret they had. Distress calls were sent to Concord Command, but no help would arrive in time. Power failed across sections of the outpost. Hulls cracked. People scrambled for shelter. The Untouchable had finally been touched. And for a few short minutes it looked like the Threnix were right. There was no hidden power, no ancient force, no black fire, just blood, metal, and silence. But then something appeared. Not from Earth, not from the Concord. It was not even on any known registry. The ship was large, black as the void, shaped like a blade without edges, as if cut from space itself. It arrived without sound, emerging not through jump space or warp lanes, but simply being there as if it had always been watching. The Threnix ships turned toward it, unsure whether it was friend or foe. They scanned it, hailed it, fired warning. Shots the ship did not respond. It had no shields, no visible weapons, and no heat signature. But then it pulsed just once with a wave of energy that registered on no known frequency. Every Threnix system, across every vessel, went dark. Engines sputtered, weapons powered down, artificial gravity reversed, and targeting systems locked onto empty space. The crews panicked, shouting into dead coms, trying to reboot. But then it got stranger. Time it, at least for those aboard the attacking ships, skipped forward. 2 hours passed in an instant. They awoke, slumped at their controls, confused and weak, with flickers of memory like broken dreams. When they checked their systems, they found every weapon melted from the inside out, every engine frozen mid-cycle. External sensors showed their ships covered in patches of corrosion, as if they had been drifting for decades instead of hours. The human outpost, however, was untouched. No hull damage, no casualties, not even a power flicker. The black ship was already gone. No departure signature, no light trail, just silence, again. The only trace it left behind was a signal carved into the data cores of the Threnix command vessel, appearing in every language the galaxy knew. 3 simple words. We saw. We answered. The Thrinics retreated immediately, dragging their disabled fleet away from the nebula with the help of remote haulers. No threats followed, no explanation given. When news reached the Concorde, it spread faster than any official could stop it. Across hundreds of systems, people spoke in low voices. The untouchable rule had been tested on. The answer had come. Not from Earth's military, not from secret Concorde tech, but from something unknown, older than protocol, and far more precise than war. Commander Reyes received the report while in transit between stations, and even she was stunned. The description matched nothing from any archive. Not even the strange records found on Denethor Prime. It wasn't just the ship's actions that disturbed her, but the message it left behind. We saw, not I or they. We, which meant more than one. A group, a watcher, or perhaps watchers, plural. Were they machines? Ancient beings? An artificial intelligence hidden in the void? Or something strange or something tied to whatever past had shaped humanity in silence? Reyes couldn't say. Neither could Varn, who reviewed the telemetry and said only this was not vengeance. It was a reminder. The Concorde Council gathered. In secret, some urged caution. Others argued the galaxy needed answers. But no one suggested retaliation. Even the Threnics, pride wounded and power shaken, went quiet. They didn't deny what had happened, but they never spoke of it publicly. Again, and in the quiet that followed, something shifted. A sense of weight settled across the galaxy. Species that had doubted the legends now reconsidered. Even those who had never feared humans before now treated them with care. Not because of what humans might do, but because of what might come if they were harmed. The black fire had never been seen, and maybe it never would. But something else had taken its place in the minds of leaders and warriors alike. A sense that somewhere beyond the veil of space, someone watches, and when humans are hurt, they respond not with war, but with something far colder, something final. As for the humans on Haven 47, they never saw the ship. Most of them didn't even know they had been saved. Life returned to normal. Repairs were made. Research resumed. But a few among them noticed that strange, quiet hum in the air, that moment when all clocks were off by exactly 2 hours, and wondered, deep in their hearts, if they had been part of something the universe itself didn't fully understand. The great Concorde spire rose like a needle of silver glass into the clouds of Elysian Prime. Its walls filled with the light of thousands of delegates gathered from every corner of known space. This final meeting was not broadcast, not recorded, and not meant for history. It was for decision alone. What had begun as whispers and scattered warnings had grown into truth, undeniable and terrifying. The events at the Eltaran Nebula could not be dismissed as coincidence or propaganda. Something had responded when humans were attacked. Something beyond the understanding of even the oldest minds present. And now, a question hung over them all like a blade. Should humanity be told the full truth? Should Earth know that it was being watched, maybe protected, perhaps even guarded by something older than stars? The debate was fierce. Representatives from ancient empires, once rulers of entire sectors, spoke with a nervousness they hadn't felt in centuries. Some feared panic, arguing that revealing the truth might cause humans to become arrogant, reckless, or were curious enough to go looking for the force behind their protection. Others believed humans had the right to know, to prepare for a future shaped by forces they never asked for. And then, from the edge of the chamber, Commander Ayla Reyes stood to speak. Her voice was steady, not loud, but it carried weight. She said only a few words, and yet they silenced every delegate. "You fear us," she said calmly, "because you think we're protected. Maybe we are, but we never asked to be." Her words struck the room like thunder. There was no pride in her voice, no claim of power, just truth. Humanity had never declared itself untouchable. That choice had been made about them, not by them. And now the galaxy had to decide whether it would act out of furrow respect. After hours more of silent thought, the final vote came. It was unanimous. The pact would remain. No one would strike against humanity, not because of legends, not because of military force, but because something else existed between the stars. something that had chosen to stand between harm and humanity. The decision was not made in fear, it was made in awe. From that day forward, the Concord declared humanity not as a threat, but as a bridge between what was known and what remained unknowable, between flesh and something deeper, something older, perhaps not even fully alive as the galaxy understood. Life. Some delegates whispered theories in private. They said Earth was not just a planet but a seed planted by forces outside this reality. Others believed humans had been chosen in ancient times, linked to a forgotten promise or pact that still echoed through the hidden parts of space. A few even suggested that humanity's true allies did not exist in this dimension at all, but in a layer of space only glimpsed during fold drives and black hole studies, where ships sometimes heard voices in silence or lost time without cause. No one knew for certain. But one truth settled into the hearts of every being present that day. It passed quietly from system to system, without broadcast or announcement. It was spoken only in careful moments, with quiet respect. Humans are untouchable, not because they are dangerous, but because someone else is watching. And that truth changed the galaxy, not with violence, not with war, but with silence and stories. Merchants painted human symbols on their ships, not for trade, but for safety. Frontier colonies welcomed human settlers like good luck charms. Some species began to teach their young not to fear the unknown, but to watch what the unknown chose to protect. Earth never fully understood what had been decided in the halls of the Concord Spire. The story was never officially told, but pieces of it reached them anyway. A few old veterans spoke of battles that never happened. Explorers reported strange signals in deep space, brief glimpses of black ships that didn't register on sensors. And in the minds of many, especially those who had seen the stars up close, a quiet question remained. Why do we survive when others fall? Why, in a galaxy of chaos, are we still standing? Commander Reyes never answered that question. She returned to Earth only once and never gave interviews. But in her private notes, never published, she wrote one sentence. Maybe it wasn't about us at all. Maybe someone else made a promise, and they're still keeping it. So the story continued, passed from pilot to pilot, from elder to child, from outpost to ship, until it became a kind of myth that no one dared test. A silent rule not written in law, but etched into the very stars. We don't harm them. We don't even try.